Students, I think we can start. Vardhan?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Vardhan. I think we can start with it.
Okay, ma'am. A very good morning to everyone present. I, Vardhan Taneja, would like to take this opportunity to welcome you all to the Social Club seminar on the topic Social and Economic Implication of the Pandemic COVID-19, Dark Clouds but a Silver Lining. The resource person for today's seminar are Shivani Sharma, Shivani Soni, and Prakriti Ahuja, all from MBA first year. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all in this seminar. In keeping with that tradition, we at BCIPS would like to commence today's seminar by invoking the blessings of Ma Saraswati. Let us begin by playing the Saraswati Vandana.
श्वेत पद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युतं शङ्करं प्रभृतिभिः देवैः सदा वन्दिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेष जाड्यापहा
Vardhan, you are on mute, beta. Vardhan, unmute yourself.
After this auspicious start to the event, let me now introduce to our resource person for the day. Our first resource person for the day is Shivani Sharma, a student of MBA first year, Section A. Shivani would be discussing about the worldwide economic implication of the pandemic. Session 2 of the seminar will focus on the major implications of COVID-19 and will be taken by Shivani Soni, a student of MBA first year, Section A. The last session of the seminar will cover the positive implications experienced during the pandemic time. This would be taken by Prakriti Ahuja, student of MBA first year, Section B. A warm welcome to all our resource persons. The coronavirus disease has impacted every segment of life, like commercial establishment, education, religion, transport, tourism, employment, entertainment, food security, sports. The outbreak is a major threat to the global economy. The public health emergency of international concern declared the agent as SARS-CoV-2 or severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus. This pandemic had an unusual way of striking the entire world. Crisis spread rapidly, disease load and casualty was seen rising throughout the world, and panic spread across nations. Around the globe, the reaction, perception, and outcome were distinct. Because of global economy's stagnation, with production intervention, the working of global supply chain have been disrupted. Companies all over the world, regardless of size, had to undergo production reduction. Transport being restricted regardless of size and even confined between countries has further slowed economic functioning. Coronavirus pandemic is a global public health issue and has also caused psychological concern. The outbreak has reflected unfavorable mental health impacts and symptoms. The level of psychological effect as anxiety, depression, and stress since the start of epidemic has increased due to the sudden shift in scenarios, death, and isolation. There is a need for all of us to understand the impact that this pandemic had all over the world. This is important in today's scenarios more than ever. Without taking any more time, I request our first resource person, Shivani Sharma, to take over and commence the seminar. Please take over, Shivani.
Thank you, Vardhan, for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. In this session, we will look into the worldwide economic implications of COVID-19. As you all know, the COVID-19 pandemic is a global shock like no other, involving simultaneous disruptions to both supply and demand in an interconnected world economy. On the supply side, infection reduced labor supply and productivity, while lockdowns, business closures, and social distancing caused supply disruptions. On the demand side, layoffs and loss of income from mobility, quarantines and unemployment, and worsened economic prospects reduced household consumptions and firms' investments. The extreme uncertainty about the path, duration, magnitude, and impact of the pandemic could pose a vicious cycle of dampening businesses and consumer confidence and tightening financial conditions, which could lead to job losses and investment. Key challenges for any empirical economic analysis of COVID-19 are how to identify these unprecedented shocks, how to account for its non-linear effects, how to consider its cross-country spillovers, and how to quantify the uncertainty surrounding forecast, given its unprecedented nature. COVID-19 is not only a global pandemic, but also a public health crisis. It has also severely affected the global economy and financial markets. Significant reduction in income, a rise in unemployment, and disruptions in transportation, service, and manufacturing industries are among the consequences of the disease mitigation measures that have been implemented in many countries. It has become clear that the most governments in the world underestimated the risk of rapid COVID-19 spread and were mostly reactive in their crisis response. As disease outbreaks are not likely to disappear in the near future, proactive international actions are required to not only save lives, but also to protect economic prosperity. Before talking about the Indian scenario, I would like to ask you what changes you saw till date, any minor and major ones. Please tell us.
I was really think about transportation. Transportation was transportation was basically having the problem, and the schools were having the problem of like teachers, and they were having the problem of like distancing and all. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're right. Ronak, you were saying something?
Yes, I would like to add one more point. Right now, many of us don't have savings. They spent all the savings in the lockdown.
Yeah. You're right. You're absolutely right. Okay, moving further. If we talk about Indian scenario in COVID-19, it brought social and economic life to a standstill. In this discussion, the focus is on assessing the impact on affected sectors such as aviation, travel, retail, capital market, MSMEs, and hospitality. International and internal mobility is restricted, and the revenues generated by travel and tourism, which contributed to 9.2% of the GDP, will take a major toll on the GDP growth rate this year. aviation revenue came down by 1.56 billion US dollars. The crisis witnessed a horrifying mass exodus of such floating population of migrants on foot amidst countrywide lockdown. Their worries primarily were job loss, daily rations, and absence of a social security net. India must rethink on her development paradigm and make it more inclusive. COVID-19 has also provided some unique opportunities to India. There is an opportunity to participate in global supply chains. Multinationals are losing their trust in China. To make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, some reforms are needed, labor reforms being one of them. The COVID-19 pandemic affected the manufacturing sectors and the service sectors. Hospitality, tours and travels, healthcare, retail, banks, hotels, real estate, education, IT, recreation, media, and many more others. The economic stress has started and will grow rapidly, while lockdown and social distancing result in productivity loss. On the one hand, they cause a sharp decline in demand for goods and services by the consumers in the market on the other. Lockdown and social distancing are the only cost-effective tools available to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Governments are leading by doing, as it was in the case of containment strategy in Bhilwara district, Rajasthan. The economic risks of closing the economy remains none other than less. Similarly, flattening the caseload curve is critical for any economy at large, but it comes with an economic cost. Let's talk about the trickle-down effect. Okay, let me ask you, how many of you cooked at home? Please tell us.
Yes,
Hi, Shivani.
Yeah, Ayush.
Actually, I am very fond of cooking, and you can say that it's my hobby. So I cooked a lot of things at home during pandemic.
Yeah. So did I. Many of us did, right? We all cooked, cleaned, and did all those household chores we don't bother to do usually in our life. Between February and April 2020, the share of households that experienced a fall in income shot up to nearly 46%. Inflation rates on goods and services, including food products and fuels, were expected to rise later this year. Social distancing resulted in job losses, specifically those in India's lower economic strata. Several households terminated their domestic health services, essentially an unorganized monthly paying job. Most Indians spend a large amount of time engaging in household chores themselves, making it the most widely practiced lockdown activity. Aid from Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. The most devastating impact of the virus and the lockdown had been on the economically backward class, with limited access to proper health care and other resources. This resulted that government has launched various programs and campaigns to help these households. Under the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, 312 billion Indian rupees were accrued and provided around 331 million beneficiaries. That included women, construction workers, farmers, and senior citizens. More aid was announced in mid-May 2020 to mainly support small businesses through the crisis. Unemployment. In September 2020, unemployment rate was over 6%. This was a significant improvement from the previous months. A damaging impact on the economy as large as India's caused due to total lockdown was imminent. Unemployment peaked at 24%, and many factors contributed to the rise in unemployment, as previously discussed. Because of people not getting help from their employers, many of them went back to their homes barefoot, carrying the hopes on their shoulders for a better tomorrow. As you can see in this graph, the unemployment went highest in April with 23.53%. This was possibly a result due to the decrease in demand as well as the disruption of workforce faced by the companies. Furthermore, this caused a GVA loss of more than 9% for the Indian economy that month. Growth of GDP. India's gross domestic product for April-June quarter slipped by sharp 23.9%, told by the provisional estimate released by Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. India's annual gross domestic product for July-September 2020 slowed down by 7.5%. With the commencement of 2020 to 2021 financial year, the effects of coronavirus has affected the stability of the economy of 150 countries, jeopardizing their lifestyle, economy, impacting businesses, and assumption of common well-being, which we had taken for granted. The lockdown has adversely affected the service sector like banks, restaurants, food vendors, food delivery providers at par with providing health, safety and medical sustenance. We should also have to think about the health of this thickening economy by mobilizing the resources and making plans for job creation and job continuity as well. Let's talk about the sectorial impact, restaurant services. Let me ask you, how many of you went outside and ate out with your family after the pandemic? Any of you, please?
Yes, because
Yes.
that was the toughest, and the people were having protection and all.
Yeah. It was very hard. But not many of us did, right? I personally too preferred home delivery. Dining out industry in India is yet to bounce back and operating at 8 to 10% of pre-COVID levels. Slump in the industry is largely driven by markets being in lockdown, consumers not stepping out due to the fear of transmission, and restaurants not opening up even if the city is not in the lockdown, as told by Saurabh. Even in the cities where restriction has been lifted, only 17% of dining out restaurants are open for business at the moment, which are also running at very low capacity. As you can see in the graph, not many restaurants are open for business in the major cities of India. Out of the 83% of restaurants that are not open for business, 10% of restaurants have already shut down permanently. And it's anticipated that an additional 30% restaurants do not reopen at all. Remaining 43% of restaurants are closed right now, but likely to open as the situation gets better. Most of the customers plan to decrease their spending on dining out in the near future, and some of them will spend their shift to food delivery. 60% restaurant owners said that they have estimated to retain less than 0.5% of their original business volumes for a few months, even after post-COVID. Restaurants are paving their way by introducing new and innovative initiatives to make it #safe to eat out for their customers, while attributing utmost importance to social distancing and hygiene. Owing to these measures and innovations, businesses have started recovering. Dine Out reservation and restaurant tech platforms has projected a recovery rate of over 70% to be achieved in Delhi, Bangalore, Ahmedabad in the festive season. It will be followed by Kolkata, Chennai, Jaipur, and Hyderabad with a 55% increase. MSME, micro, small, and medium enterprises. India's second largest employment generator after agriculture is MSME sector. It acts as a breeding ground for the entrepreneurs and innovators with considerable support in strengthening business ecosystem. The number of MSMEs in India are close to 63 million. It employs 110 million people. The contribution of GDP in India is 30%. Researchers and surveys have proved again and again that this sector acts as a catalyst for the socio-economic development of our country. All this becomes most important with government's new mission of achieving $5 trillion economy by 2025. Within the target, the role of MSME sector is going to play an important one, with expected contribution to GDP above the 50% mark. The potential of Indian MSME sector is still untapped. And that is one of the reasons why government policies are now more convergent towards building resilient ecosystem with better breadth and depth. Several reports have shown that the disruptions caused by COVID-19 pandemic has impacted MSME's earnings by 20 to 50%. Micro and small enterprises face the maximum heat due to the liquidity crunch. Enterprises working in essential commodity businesses were better off in terms of interrupted but predictable cash flows. Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Tamil Nadu, and Madhya Pradesh have this highest number of registered MSMEs. A study by IMO estimated that about a quarter of 75 million MSMEs will be facing closure. Many of these MSMEs have loan obligation and monthly EMIs to pay. Many of them will just disappear if their cash cycle is disturbed because of the lockdown, with fixed costs dangling over them in such a situation. Consumer goods, garments, logistics are facing a sharp drop in the businesses. MSMEs engaging in the service sector are still operating. However, is likely to isolate due to the plunging liquidity constraints with low purchasing. imports such as electronics, pharmaceuticals, consumer durables, etc., are facing a downfall caused a huge raptor across the value chain. As a splash of relief came by the RBI announcement of a 3-month moratorium on repayment of loan and reduction in the repo rate on loan funding from the government. Some enterprises innovated the ways by shifting focus from the non-essential commodities towards the essential commodities, like production of hand sanitizer, toiletries, PPE kits, reusable masks, and are able to survive in the tough times. MSME present in remote areas also faced many difficulties due to the interrupted supply chain systems and interstate lockdown provisions. Let me ask you, how many of you had plans to travel? Do you have any plans to travel? Please tell us. Wow, nobody did. Okay, of course I did. The global outbreak of COVID-19 led to a freezing of flight operations, both domestic and international, in India. This has in terms of
Raj, please mute.
on the already struggling sector. Government data showed though limited operations have started, experts suggest that it will take some time to industry to bounce back to their pre-COVID levels. The Airport Authority of India, AAI, responsible for managing and maintaining civil aviation infrastructure across the country, reported a 92% fall in its revenue from rupees 2,973 crores during April-June 2019 to merely 293 crores during the corresponding period in 2020. Severe revenue and job losses. Other wings of aviation sector also took a hit. The revenue of Indian carriers declined by 86%. Airport operators witnessed an 84% drop, and Air India reported a 78% fall in revenue during April-June 2020. Pay cuts are the way, apparently yes, for them. To survive the pandemic-induced crisis, all airlines took cost-cutting measures like firing or pay cuts in 2020. In April, Go Air sent the majority of its employees on leave without even paying them a single cent. Air India had in April cut the salaries of their employees by 10%. At the same time, SpiceJet and Indigo cut the salaries of all their employees by 10 to 30% and 5 to 25% respectively. In July, Indigo also laid off 10% of their workforce. Air Asia India in April has cut the salaries of its senior employees by up to 20%. Starting April, Vistara implemented a leave without pay program for its employees based on their seniority. Currently, the Indian airlines are operating domestic flights at around 80% of their pre-COVID levels. The domestic services are expected to reach their pre-COVID levels by March 2021. Automobile. The global pandemic caused by novel coronavirus at the time when both Indian economy and the automotive sector were hoping for a recovery. COVID-19 may result in a negative impact of 1 to 2% on the expected growth rates. Although this is contingent on the government's continuing to invest in large infrastructure projects and liquidity available with the transportation sector. The absolute magnitude of impact depends on how fast we recover from this pandemic even after the launch of the vaccine. The onset of COVID-19 in India had a negative impact on the automotive sector. It is estimated that there will be an overall revenue impact of at least 1.5 to 2 billion US dollars per month across the industry. Even after opening, further decline in passenger vehicle demand is expected, with discretionary spend taking a backseat. This will be coupled with transition to BS6 norms that will increase the cost of the ownership. Farm sector and two-wheelers demand could see a dip but expected to bounce back in a U fashion. Commercial vehicles are expected to show some resilience, although this is contingent on governments continuing to invest in the infrastructure projects and the liquidity available with the transportation sector. Online business and internet business sector. The online business in today's economy play a major role with a market share of 950 billion US dollars. It contributes to 10% of the Indian GDP and showed a drastic improvement in the employment sector in the financial year 2019, that is 8%. Its major sectors are household and personal care products, that is 50%, healthcare segment with 31%, and the food and beverage sector with 19%. The pandemic is expected to help uplift India's e-commerce market almost threefold to around $85 billion by 2024. Despite other sectors being impacted severely, other e-commerce players which are expected to witness a rapid increase from various sectors, including Grofers, Big Basket, and Lenskart. Presently, about 80% of order volumes has picked up for them. The e-commerce sector saw a dip in growth with pressure on the supply chain deliveries and the expectation of the consumers on the companies to come up with newer distribution channels, focusing on the direct-to-customer routes. In this soaring environment, the managing and predicting of demand will play a vital role in the customer relation sector. The key notable points here are daily essential categories are massive 200% hike in searches driven by hygiene and healthcare needs. Lifestyle categories sale witnessed a drop between 15 to 30% with an increase in consumer price sensitivity. With the advent of lockdown, most of the sectors shifted their functioning from online. The MNCs are also utilizing their work from home options to carry out an uninterrupted working. With these trends already in the baby steps, they were forced to hit the fast forward button. The digital world got such a push that small scale retailers like bricks and mortar stores are also using Paytm, Bheem UPI, Google Pay, and other digital channels. The education sector is now completely based on digital platforms. The colleges and universities are conducting their routine classes being in the comfort of their homes and various online platforms such as Google Classrooms. Their curriculums will include college library, fee payments, online class, exams, etc. The present crisis has highlighted the importance of investing in technologies like cloud data and cybersecurity, self-service capabilities, and e-governance. Worldwide impact. Till now, we have discussed the Indian scenario. Let's talk about the worldwide economic impact of COVID-19. With globalization, urbanization, and environmental change, infectious disease outbreaks and epidemics have become a global threat requiring a collective response. Although the majority of the developed countries, predominantly European and North American, have strong real-time surveillance and healthcare system to manage these infectious disease spread. Improvement in public health capacities in low-income and high-risk countries, including human and animal surveillance, workforce preparedness, and strengthening laboratory resources, needs to be supported by using national resources supplemented with international donor funding. International collective action among governments, non-government organizations, and private companies had been advocated in building and financing technological platforms to accelerate the research and development response to new pathogens with epidemic potential. In the case of COVID-19, such cooperation is critical, especially for the development and production of the vaccine. The Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovation, CEPI, a global partnership launched in 2017, has tracked global efforts of COVID-19 vaccine development. The activity is advocating for strong international cooperation to ensure that vaccine, when developed, will be manufactured in sufficient quantities and the equitable access will be provided to all nations despite their ability to pay. In case of COVID-19, the collective response and adoption of preventive measures to stop the global spread were implemented too late. After COVID-19 has already penetrated other regions through international travel. As it has been observed globally that the shutdown of all economic activities, production, consumption, and trade to control the spread of COVID-19 is imminent. The nature of shutdown is so unique in the case of COVID-19 due to a supply shock, a demand shock, and a market shock. The recovery in economy depends on the timing and magnitude of government support, as well as the level of corporate debt and how the companies and markets cope with lower demands. Government assistance to those most in need is critical measures to save many lives. impact on stock markets. Let's talk about stock markets. The FTSE, Financial Times Stock Exchange, Dow Jones Industrial Average, and the Nikkei all saw huge fall as the number of COVID-19 cases grew in the first month of the crisis. Big shifts in stock markets where shares in companies are bought and sold can affect the value of pensions or individual saving accounts. The FTSE is a share index of 100 companies listed on the London Stock Exchange with the highest market capitalization. The major Asian and US stock markets did recover from the announcement of vaccine in November 2020, but the FTSE is still in the negative territory. The FTSE dropped 14.3% in 2020, its worst performance since 2008. In response, central banks in many countries, including the UK's, have slashed their interest rates. That should, in theory, make borrowing more cheaper and encourage spending to boost the economy. Some markets recovered ground in January this year, but this is a normal tendency known as January effect. Analysts are worried that the possibility of further delay in vaccination programs might trigger some more market volatility this year. Let's talk about unemployment worldwide. Millions of workers have also been put on government-supported jobs, retention schemes as a part of the economy, such as tourism and hospitality, that have come to a near standstill. The number of new job opportunities is still very low in many countries. In the United States, the proportion of people out of work hit a yearly total of 8.9%, according to International Monetary Fund, IMF, signaling an end to a decade of job expansions. Job vacancies in Australia have returned to the same levels of 2019, but they are lagging in France, Spain, and the UK with several other countries. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused direct impacts on the income due to premature deaths, workplace absenteeism, and reduction in productivity, and has created a negative supply shock, with manufacturing productive activities slowing down due to the global supply chain disruptions and closure of factories. For example, in China, the production index in February declined by more than 54% from the preceding month's value. In addition to market health inequalities, especially in countries without universal healthcare coverage, the economic impact of COVID-19 pandemic will be heterogeneous across the country's income distribution. For example, office workers are more likely to transition to flexible working hours during the restrictions, while many industrial, tourism, retail, and transport workers will suffer a significant reduction in work due to community restrictions and low demand for their goods and services. Let's talk about recession worldwide. The IMF estimated that the global economy shrunk by 4.4% in 2020. The organization described that the decline as worst as since the Great Depression of 1930s. The risk of global recession due to COVID-19 in 2020 and 2021 would be extremely high. The only major economy to grow in 2020 was China. It registered a growth of merely 2.3%. The IMF is, however, predicting global growth of 5.2% in 2021. That will be driven primarily by countries such as India's and China's. Forecast will grow up by 8.8% and 8.2% respectively. Recovery is big. Service-reliant industries that have been hit hard by outbreaks such as UK's and Italy's will be slow. Travel worldwide is still far away from taking off. The travel industry had been damaged badly, with airlines cutting their flights and customers canceling their business trips and holidays. The International Air Transport Association projects a loss in airline revenue solely from passenger carrier of up to $314 billion US. Restaurants and bars, travel and transportation, entertainment, and sensitive manufacturing are among the sectors in the US economy that are hit worst. The advanced seasonally adjusted insured unemployment rate in the US has already reached a record level of 11% for the week ending April 11, 2020. New variants of virus discovered only in recent months have forced many countries to introduce tighter travel restrictions. Data from the flight tracking service Flightradar 24 shows that the number of flights globally took a huge hit in 2020, and it is still a very long way from recovery. Hospitality sector. Hospitality sector has still shut its door worldwide. The hospitality sector has been hit hard with the millions of jobs and many companies being bankrupt. Billions of dollars had been lost in 2020, although the forecast for 2021 is still better. Transparent, an industry-leading intelligence company, has covered over 35 million hotels and renting listings worldwide, has registered a fall in reservations in all of the top travel destinations. Many analysts believe that the international travel and tourism won't return to their pre-pandemic levels until around 2025. Shopping at home. Retail footfall has seen unprecedented fall as shoppers stayed at home. New variants and surges in cases have made problems much worse. Pedestrian numbers have fallen further from very first lockdown. Separate research suggests that the consumers are still feeling anxious about their returns to the store. Accountancy giant EY says that 67% of customers are now not willing to travel even more than 5 kilometers for their shopping. This change in shopping behavior has significantly boosted online retail with a global revenue of $3.9 trillion in 2020. In addition to the impact on productive economic activities, consumers typically change their spending behavior mainly due to the decrease in demand and household finances, as well as the fear and panic that accompany the pandemic. Service industries such as tourism, hospitality, and transportation have suffered significant losses due to the reduction in travel. Pharmaceutical companies. Pharmaceutical companies are among
Shivani, you are not audible. Students, please bear with us. Shivani will be back within 2 minutes. Shivani joins back. Can anyone let us know what do you perceive about the economic implications of COVID-19 on Indian economy? Anyone else from the class? Yes.
I'm so sorry about that. I lost my internet connection.
No issue. Shivani, you can continue.
Thank you everyone for waiting. Okay. Moderna, Novavax, and AstraZeneca have significant rise because of the COVID vaccine development. But Pfizer has seen its share price fall. The partnership with BioNTech, the high cost of production and management of the vaccine, and the growing number of same size of competitors have reduced the investments trust in the companies to have bigger revenues in 2021. Many more, such as Johnson & Johnson, Sanofi, and GSK, will join the vaccine distribution during the 2021. Let me conclude you by showing a video. a summed up explanation for the worldwide economic implications of COVID-19.
We're 6 months into this pandemic. What we're seeing is that it's really something that's unprecedented. We've seen huge drops in consumer spending, which in turn has impacted small businesses, which in turn has impacted employment. It's really unique in the sense that it doesn't look like previous recessions. When we look at who's been hit hardest, one thing we see is that consumer spending has dropped precipitously, especially right after COVID cases started going up in early March. But something we saw is that the drop in consumer spending was most extreme with high-income individuals. So it was high-income families who really stopped spending. And in part, this is because high-income families can self-isolate, they can work remotely, and they're the ones who are really not going to their local restaurants, local bars, and local small businesses. Usually these higher income communities are somewhat buffered from these economic shocks. But in this case, it's actually those low-income workers who are working in these high-income communities who are facing the biggest brunt of this crisis. So for example, I'm in New York now. If you were a low-income worker and you were working in a restaurant or bar in Manhattan, a very high-income community, there was a 70% chance that you lost your job. Whereas if you're working in the Bronx, a somewhat lower income community, a similar low income worker working in a bar or restaurant in that neighborhood only had a 30% chance of losing their job. So workers are getting hit across the board, but in this case, they're being hit especially hard in some of these higher income communities. At Opportunity Insights, we specialize in big data. And so we're able to measure the impacts of the COVID-19 crisis using private sector information. The data really shows us that we need to support those families and individuals that have been hit hardest by this crisis, right? So those families that have lost their jobs, especially focusing on expanding unemployment insurance and really providing those supports to those folks who are losing dollars every day because they aren't able to go to work. Something else we're seeing besides the employment impacts are impacts on education. We're seeing that once schools shut down, that low-income families and low-income communities were being hit hard. Families and children in those communities had the highest levels of drop-off in terms of student engagement and student progress. So we really need to be focusing on those most vulnerable families and those most vulnerable communities. The economy, consumer spending, and these economic trends are really being driven by concerns around the public health crisis. If we really want to move into real recovery, we have to deal with the virus head on. And until we deal with the public health crisis, the economy is not going to rebound fully.
So, we all saw how the pandemic has affected people, their incomes, as well as the economy. However, every crisis brings about a unique opportunity to rethink the path undertaken for the development of human being, community, and society altogether. The COVID-19 pandemic has a clear message for worldwide economies to adopt sustainable development models, which are based on self-reliance, inclusive frameworks, and an environment friendly. I would request Vardhan to take over from here.
Thank you, Shivani, for the informative input. May I call upon our second resource person, Shivani Soni, to elaborate upon the social impact of COVID-19. Please take over, Shivani.
Thank you so much, Vardhan. As Vardhan told, that I would be discussing about the social implications of COVID-19. COVID-19, which is said to have emerged from Wuhan, has caused a serious impact on almost every society of the earth. Due to the problems caused by this particular health crisis all over the world, the World Health Organization has declared it as a global pandemic. Not only that, but because of its rampant spread, countries were forced to stop international traveling as well as locked up themselves. Also, the lockdown has been recognized as the only method to control the spread of the pandemic. And almost every country has adopted this method. This pandemic has had significant psychological and social effects on the population. Research has highlighted the impact on psychological well-beings of the most exposed groups, including children, college students, and health workers who are more likely to develop post-traumatic disorder, anxiety, depression, and other symptoms of distress. The social distance and the security measures have affected the relationship among people and the perception of empathy towards others. Let us discuss the social impact of the pandemic being seen around the world. Impact of COVID-19 on people's livelihoods, their health, and food systems. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a dramatic loss of human life worldwide. Unprecedented challenge to public health, food systems, and world of work. The economic and social disruption caused by the pandemic is devastating. Tens of millions of people are at risk of falling into poverty, while the number of undernourished people, currently estimated nearly 690 million, could increase up by 132 million by the end of the year. Millions of enterprises are at existential threat. Nearly half of the world's 3.3 billion global workforce are at risk of losing their livelihoods. Informal economy workers are particularly vulnerable because the majority lack social protection and access to quality health care and have lost access to productive assets. Without the means to earn an income during lockdowns, many are unable to feed themselves and their families. Foremost, no income means no food, or at best, less food and less nutrition. The pandemic has been affecting the entire food system and has laid bare its fragility. Border closures, trade restrictions, confinement measures have been preventing farmers from accessing markets, including for buying inputs and selling their produce, and agricultural workers from harvesting crops, thus disrupting domestic and international food supply chains and reducing access to healthy, safe, and diverse diets. Pandemic has decimated jobs and placed millions of livelihoods at risk. Breadwinners lose jobs, fall ill, or die. The food security and nutrition of millions of women are under threat. With those in low-income countries, particularly the most marginalized population, which includes small-scale farmers and indigenous people, being hardest hit. Millions of agricultural workers waged this while feeding the world regularly face high levels of working poverty, malnutrition, and poor health, and suffer from a lack of safety and labor protection, as well as other types of abuse. With low and irregular incomes and lack of social support, many of them are spurred to continue working, often in unsafe conditions, thus exposing themselves and their families to additional risks. Further, when experiencing income losses, they may resort to negative coping strategies such as distress, sale of assets, predatory loans, or child labor. Migrant agricultural workers are particularly vulnerable because they face risks in their transport, working and living conditions, and struggle to access support measures put in place by governments. Guaranteeing the safety of health of all the agri-food workers, from primary producers to those involved in food processing, transport, retail, including street food vendors, as well as better incomes and protection, will be critical to saving lives and protecting public health, people's livelihoods, and food security. In the COVID-19 crisis, food security, public health, and employment and labor issues, in particular, workers' health and safety converge. Adhering to workplace safety and health practices and ensuring access to decent work and the protection of labor rights in all the industries will be crucial in addressing dimensions of the crisis. Immediate and purposeful action to save lives and livelihoods should include extending social protection towards universal health coverage and income support for those most affected. These include workers in the informal economy and in poorly protected and low-paid jobs, including youth, older workers, and migrants. Particular attention must be paid to the situation of women who are overrepresented in low-paid jobs and care roles. Forms of support are key, including cash transfers, child allowances, and health means, shelter, food relief initiatives, support for employment retention and recovery, and financial relief for the businesses, including micro, small, medium-sized enterprises. In designing and implementing such measures, it is essential that governments work closely with their employers and workers. Countries dealing with existing humanitarian crises or emergencies are exposed to the effects of COVID-19. Responding swiftly to the pandemic while ensuring that humanitarian and recovery assistance reaches the most in need is critical. Now is the time for the global solidarity and support, especially for the most vulnerable in our societies, particularly in the emerging and developing world. Only together can we overcome the intertwined health and social and economic impacts of the pandemic and prevent escalation into a protracted humanitarian loss with the potential loss of already achieved developmental gains. Recently, the United Nations Secretary General said that they're committed to pooling their expertise and experience countries in the crisis responses measures and efforts to achieve sustainable development goals. There is a need to develop long-term sustainable strategies to address the challenges facing the agri-food sectors. Priority should be given to addressing underlying food security and malnutrition challenges, tackling rural poverty, in particular through more and better jobs in rural economy, extending social protection to all, facilitating safe migration pathways, and promoting the formalization of the informal economy. We must rethink the future of our environment and tackle climate change and environmental degradation with ambition and urgency. Only then can we protect the health, food security, and nutrition of the people and ensure that our new normal is the better one. Now, moving further, let us see the educational impact COVID had on us. I would like my friends to share their experience. What do you think? Your studies have been affected by COVID? Anybody who would like to share their experience or their opinion on this?
Yes, very much. I agree with you. Studies बहुत affect हुई हैं. As in online में जितना offline में समझ में आता है उतना online में नहीं आता. I must say that.
I totally agree. But there are pros and cons of everything. We have comfort at home, right?
Yes.
The pandemic has affected the educational systems worldwide, leading to widespread closures of schools and universities. According to a recent data released by UNESCO, schools and university closures due to COVID-19 were implemented nationwide in 165 countries, including localized closures. This affects over 1.5 billion students worldwide, accounting for 87% of the enrolled learners. Let us now see the coronavirus and the inequality. Definitely, due to COVID, inequality has really spurred. Low-income individuals are more likely to contract the coronavirus and to die from it. In countries around the world, low-income neighborhoods are disproportionately hit by the coronavirus cases. Hypothesis for why this is the case can include that poor families are more likely to live in crowded housing, working in low-skilled jobs such as supermarkets and elder care, which is deemed to be essential in the crisis. Millions of low-income people may also lack access to healthcare due to being uninsured and underinsured. Millions of people lost their health insurance after losing their jobs. Many low-income workers in service jobs have become unemployed. Next up, we have the psychological impact. Do you think that you went through something during the lockdown psychologically, or you know somebody in your known have gone through very much during the lockdown psychologically? Anybody who would like to share?
Definitely. Yep. I would mention that it has affected the people because they have the habit to go to market and shops, but that was a difficult. Yeah.
I totally agree with you, Saurabh. It's really tough for all of us during the lockdown, mentally as well as physically. I totally agree with you. On 18th March 2020, the World Health Organization issued a report related to mental health and psychological issues by addressing instructions and some social considerations during COVID-19 outbreak. The coronavirus pandemic has been followed by a spike in the cases of suicides all around the world, impacted by depressing thoughts, social isolations due to quarantine and social distancing guidelines, fear, unemployment, and financial factors. The lockdown intensified the number of those who became frustrated and depressed. There is an upsurge in social issues, including psychological disorders, suicides, etc. Children are reportedly getting depressed as well. Depression affects 264 million people around the world due to no contact with their peer groups and minimal physical activities, according to May 14 United Nations. Pets are a huge psychological support. How many of you think that pets are really a psychological support? Any of my friend who has pets at their home?
Hi, Shivani.
Hello.
Yeah, I have pet at my home, and it was quite entertaining while being around with the pet dogs. They really regenerate your mood, and you get a switch. You can get a mood switch even if you are feeling low. Playing with your dogs, interacting with your dogs, can make your mood into a good one. Bad mood switches into a good mood. So that's how it is very helpful being with a pet, especially in the lockdown duration.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I wish even I had a pet at home at that time. Pets are a huge psychological support, but due to the doubts if pets or other livestock may pass on coronavirus to humans, many people were reluctant to keep their pets fearing transmission. For instance, in the Arab world, celebrities were urging people in some countries like UK tended to acquire more pets for emotional support during the coronavirus lockdown. Another thing which was really affected during lockdown was our personal gatherings. How many of you missed your kitties, your parties, your gatherings during the lockdown? This means you did not miss your gatherings. Is it the case?
Audience, you can interact. It is a student seminar by the students and for the students. So let us have some interaction. Shivani, you can repeat your question once.
Did you guys not miss your gatherings during the lockdown? Your parties, your kitties?
I for one.
Yeah, of course, we have missed.
Yeah.
Okay. Nobody wants to share their experience. Is it the case? I really missed them. Moving forward, the impact on personal gatherings has been strong as medical experts have advised and local authorities often mandated stay-at-home orders to prevent gatherings of any size, not just the larger events that were initially restricted. Such gatherings were replaced by teleconferencing or in some cases with unconventional attempts to maintain social distancing with activities such as balcony sing-along for a concert or a parade for a birthday party. Another very devastating thing which was spurred was domestic violence. Many countries have reported an increase in domestic violence attributed to lockdowns amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Financial insecurity, stress, and uncertainty have led to increased aggression at home, with abusers able to control their partner's daily life. United Nations Secretary General Antonio has called for a domestic violence ceasefire. Now let us see an example of a real case from Hyderabad. As soon as schools were shut due to the lockdown, 16-year-old Ashi, who was asked to go back to her home, she had never imagined that the four walls of her home will become unsafe for her. After being allegedly sexually and physically harassed by her father for months in April, terrified and confused, she mustered the courage to reach out to the police, who, with the help of Sakhi Team, which is an NGO, rescued her. Since the outbreak of COVID-19, data from the State Women and Child Department shows that domestic violence, including physical and sexual assault against women and girls, has risen. In just 4 months, from March to July, the number of cases of domestic violence is more than 25% of the complaints recorded in the last 3 years. According to officials, this unusual spurt might be much lower than the actual number, as most women who experience domestic violence do not seek help, and those who wanted to might not even have been able to approach the police due to the lockdown. NGO's officials have reportedly given statements like, during the lockdown, many victims of domestic violence were trapped with their abusers, unable to reach out to us. The drastic increase in complaints was especially reported soon after alcohol shops were reopened. We received multiple cases where women were brutally beaten up by their drunk partners. Now, let us talk about the elderly care. How many of you have grandpas, grandmas at home, and you must be knowing that it was really it was told to us that this coronavirus really hits on the people who are elder, who are senior people basically. So we had to take more protection for them. Do you agree with me, guys?
Yeah, man.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So older people were particularly affected by COVID-19. They need special attention during COVID-19 crisis, and their voices, opinions, and concerns are important in formulating responses. Global data are extremely uncertain at present. Nonetheless, the heightened risk of COVID-19 for older persons are evident in national data. The scale of testing and nature of reporting may vary between governments, and hence there is a risk of misinformation by generalizing from the experience of a given country. While the number of older persons is relatively absolutely smaller in developing countries, particularly in Africa, this coincides with other serious structural risks. Countries with the fewest older persons have the fewest health resources, limited experience caring for older patients, less institutional care for older persons, and fewer public or NGO support structures for the outreach, screening, and community-based care older persons. Older persons living in long-term care facilities, such as nursing homes and rehabilitation centers, are particularly vulnerable to infection and adverse outcomes from COVID-19. Older persons who live in alone may face barriers to obtain accurate information, food, medication, and other essential supplies during quarantine conditions, and community outreach is required. Older persons, especially in isolation, those with cognitive decline, and those who are highly care dependent, need a continuum of practical and emotional support through informal networks, health caregivers, and volunteers. Another factor which was really affected during the lockdown was sports. I would like to ask my classmates, my friends, especially the boys, do you think that your sports were really affected during lockdown? You couldn't go out in the evening, play your cricket and basketball?
Yes, definitely.
Any experience you would like to share? No, let us continue then. Sport is a major contributor to economic and social development. Its role is well recognized by governments, which realize the contribution sports make to the empowerment of women and of young people, individuals and communities, as well as to health, education, social inclusion objectives. Since its onset, COVID-19 pandemic has spread to almost all countries of the world. Social and physical distancing measures, lockdown of businesses, schools, and overall social life, which have become commonplace to curtail the spread of the disease, have also disrupted many regular aspects of life, including sport and physical activity. To safeguard the health of athletes and others involved, most major sporting events at international, regional, national have been cancelled or postponed. From marathons to football tournaments, athletic championships to basketball games, handball to ice hockey, rugby, cricket, sailing, skiing, weightlifting to wrestling, and many more. The Olympics and the Paralympics, for the first time in the history of modern games, have been postponed and are expected to be held in 2021. Now, moving further, we will discuss about people with disabilities. People with disabilities are at greater risk for contracting and dying from COVID-19. This is especially true for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Data from United States indicate that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities are 4 times more likely to contract COVID and twice as likely to die from the disease. This is likely due to the fact that people with disabilities are stay-in care facilities where COVID is known to spread more easily. People with disabilities are also more likely to have comorbidities that put them at higher risk for developing COVID-related complications and may have a more difficult time socially distancing due to their support needs. People with disabilities are more likely to experience isolation and other forms of mental distress as a result of the pandemic. Women and children with disabilities are more likely to experience domestic abuse during pandemics. School closures have presented children with disabilities with a host of challenges. Many children with disabilities have seen disruptions to critical physical and occupational therapies. Many of the assistive technologies people with disabilities use are not compatible with the platform schools are using for remote learning. A large number of children with disabilities also live in poverty and may not have access to the internet and the technology required for remote learning. These children may also experience a variety of social and psychological issues as a result of school closures, including food insecurity, anxiety, as well as delays in the development. Therefore, we can see that this pandemic has had a huge impact, social impact around the world. This pandemic is preparing us to adapt a diverse way of living with positives and the major negatives that directly or indirectly affects our mental states. These include a risk of depression and anxiety, sense of detachment, loneliness, fear of losing our loved ones, and stressing about our future. And I would like to conclude by showing you all a video which will supplement my presentation and will give you a glimpse of the social impact that the COVID had around the world.
The current challenges brought about by COVID-19 for people all around the globe are unparalleled and have caused fear, anxiety, and uncertainty for so many of us. We are all going through this together, and it's important to understand that you're not alone in how you're feeling right now, and that there are practical, healthy ways to cope with these emotions. The COVID-19 pandemic has created unprecedented change and a need for a response from everyone around the globe. Many of us are worried about our loved ones and our livelihoods, and there is no one right way to cope with what we're experiencing. Remember, however you're feeling, there are others that feel the same. You are not alone. Here are a few voices of people struggling to cope during this time.
Some days I'm okay. I'm doing my best to adjust. But yesterday, I couldn't stop crying. This all just seems so unfair. And I feel so angry that this is happening to us. I'm struggling to care for my kids and work from home at the same time. And I'm worried about my parents' health. I watch the news and it just seems so hopeless. I don't know how to keep it together.
I feel so lost and sad. So much has changed. I used to have dinner every week with my family, but now I can't be in the same room with them. I really miss them.
I'm missing out on my prom and my graduation. I've literally been looking forward to these things my whole life, and I'm heartbroken.
With everything going on now, I just can't stop my thoughts. And physically, my chest hurts, and I can't breathe. I get nauseous thinking about what could happen to my family and my friends.
Before this happened, I used to worry all the time about getting sick. Now that worry has turned into absolute terror. My heart races every time I have to go to the store. What if I bring germs home with me? I can't stop washing my hands.
No matter how exhausted I am, my sleep is still terrible. I just keep picturing all the things that could possibly happen. Will I ever get a good night's sleep again?
I've been through so much already. I don't know how I'm going to deal with this too. My flashbacks are getting worse and worse.
Honestly, I feel like I'm more comfortable in times of crisis. I'm not sure why I don't feel as upset as everyone else does right now.
I don't know when or if everything is going to get back to normal. I feel like the weight of the world is on my shoulders. How many people are going to be affected? What does this mean for me and my family?
We've just heard some of the ways people are being affected by the COVID-19 situation. Here are some things that are helpful in building resilience during times of crisis and intense stress. There are a lot of things outside of our control right now, which can be scary. By focusing on the things we can control, we can refuel ourselves and become more grounded and able to focus and cope with all of the things we can't control. One of the most important actions within your control is to follow CDC guidelines to reduce your chance of being exposed or passing the virus on to others. Use social support. No one should go through this alone. There is absolutely no shame in talking about what you're going through with your friends and family, and it's important to be there for others too. Video chat and phone calls are a great way to stay connected. Prioritize self-care. Staying on a regular schedule, exercising, eating a healthy diet, keeping a sleep routine, and taking time to meditate or pray are all important, now more than ever. Be gentle with yourself. During times like this, you will have good days and bad days. Your emotions are most likely heightened at this time. Try not to compare your life to what you see on your friends' social media feeds. There is always more going on behind screens. Helping others can bring joy and gratification. Do what you can to help others, even if it's something as simple as lending an ear or making someone smile. Be kind to the people around you, especially the folks who are still out working, to ensure we all have what we need. If each day feels like an uphill battle, it may help to seek out professional support. To continue helping during this time of social distancing, many mental health providers are using telemental health in their practice. If you can't afford therapy or need to talk to someone right away, you can call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline 24 hours a day at 1-800-273-8255. You are not alone in how you are feeling. There are things you can do and resources you can use to cope during this challenging time. Check out our library for more videos to learn more about mental health, dealing with isolation, and ways to cope. We're all in this together.
Over to you, Vardhan.
Thank you, Shivani. This was indeed an eye-opener. Today's Prakriti Ahuja will be talking about the silver lining of this dark cloud called COVID-19. Please take over, Prakriti.
Thank you, Vardhan. As we are aware of the economic and social implication of COVID-19, as discussed by both the speakers. Now, let's look forward to some of the positives that COVID has brought to our life. With us entering 2021, we have a lot of "Can we uninstall 2020" memes swarming us on social media. With countries and cities getting into lockdowns and lives pulled into standstill, coronavirus, or more sophisticatedly titled as COVID-19, has made communities stay away from each other for survival. It's easy to lose our hope and brood over the side effects of any event, especially when as a community we are battling a global pandemic. For every low, there is a high, and it's true that even this current scenario has a silver lining to it. And before starting, I would like to ask you all to share the positives that COVID has brought to you.
I would like to share a positive thing that happened with me. I get the time to spend with my family in the COVID.
Yeah. Anybody else who would like to? Hi, Shivani.
I would like to add on to this that COVID has made us all sit together, enjoy our quality time together, lead to betterment of relationships, and secondly, from the health perspective also, people are more health conscious nowadays.
Yes, yeah, that's true. Thank you so much, Ronak and Shivani. Now, let's move forward. Now, there are several positive effects of COVID-19 pandemic that we must look forward to. Some of them are as follows. It helped build genuine relationship. We all have been so busy living the life. Many of us have lost those real, genuine moments we have with our loved ones. It could have been due to the busy schedules, running around to make ends meet, and rushing to be in urgent meeting. Now, the COVID-19 situation has positively impacted the way we emote and maintain relationships. We got to spend our time with our family and plan our work better. This actually helped us build a better future for both our work and family. As life slowed down, we have found ways to stay connected with people, even if it is virtually. The forced isolation has served as a reminder of how much our loved ones means to us. And with this newfound importance of connection, families are coming together in ways like never before. We realized we all are equal with regard to the force of nature. Rich or poor, great or small, this virus has impacted all of us. We are starting to understand how much we depend on each other. On an individual level, I have realized how much I need my friends and family. That without them, life is just not the same. On a societal level, we realized we need to work together to stay safe. It's not enough that only 1 or 2 people will follow the recommended health guidelines, but we must all work together in order to avoid spreading the virus. And on global level, countries are realizing how difficult it is to get by without external aid. We even see countries with previous rocky relationships now working together and sending medical supplies and equipment to help one another. Let's hope these relations will continue even after the pandemic gets over. Now, the next thing we experienced was how our entire lifestyle changed to practice better hygiene. Being hygienic is no longer just a good habit, but the very skill we need for survival. Times have changed and people are now aware of how important it is to keep ourselves clean. We all have had a lifestyle change for the good. We are going to remember to cover our mouths when we cough, to sanitize our hands after and before touching anything else, because we know what can happen if we don't. We went from shaking hands to namaste so as to follow the no contact policy to help prevent COVID. All the famous personalities around the globe started practicing namaste in place of shaking hands as a form of greeting, a gesture only followed by us Indians till now. Restaurants and other food establishments remained closed for the initial phase of the nationwide lockdown. Whether it was by choice or compulsion, one of the biggest shifts in eating habit has been the reliance on home cooked meals as opposed to eating out or ordering food online. For various reasons, around 60% of consumers around the world reported more cooking at home. Becoming self-relevant was mantra has been the mantra of late. The younger demographic groups picked up cooking and baking skills and took charge of their own meals. And some of them even started with their own startups from the comfort of their home. Now here you can see some of the pictures of the delicacies that were cooked and enjoyed at my home during the lockdown. Okay, now I'm pretty sure that the next point which I'm going to discuss has been experienced and witnessed by all of us. And we all have enjoyed this period very much, which is the cleaner air and the greener environment. Greenhouse gas emission and pollution levels across the country had fallen significantly. Delhi had enjoyed one of the lowest air pollution levels seen in the past decade or longer. The same was true for other metropolitan cities like Mumbai and Kolkata. Nitrogen dioxide fell by 40 to 50% in all metro cities. Since factories were closed and transportation was not required, India's air quality index improved. Now, in this particular slide, you can see some of the unedited pictures of our very own Delhi that were clicked by me during the lockdown period. Another example of cleaner air was seen when on April 3rd, residents of Jalandhar, a city in Punjab state, woke up to the view of the Dauladhar mountain range, a rare feat in normal times, considering the distance between the two places lying nearly 213 kilometers apart from each other and have not been visible from the city in recent memory. The rivers of India have to bear the brunt of our inadequate waste disposal means. But ever since the lockdown was imposed, the water quality level of the Ganga and Yamuna has improved and the chemical pollution level has dipped. According to the real-time water monitoring data of the Central Pollution Control Board, the average water quality of 27 points of Ganga seen in the recent days is suitable for bathing and propagation of wildlife and fisheries. Now, let's talk about how the wildlife is rejuvenating. Apart from sighting the occasional leopard on the streets of quasi-urban Maharashtra and spotting flocks of flamingos in Navi Mumbai, other wildlife, including that of mountain goats, bison, wildcats, and birds, were seen enjoying the human free space in many parts of the world. The migratory birds have been spotted returning to lakes and water bodies they had once abandoned due to heavy pollution and human intervention. Nature is healing while people restrict their movement outdoors and vehicle retreat to carriages. Nearly 4.75 lakhs, which is the highest number in many years, olive ridley turtles had made their nest in the Rishikesh beach of Odisha due to empty beaches. The global tourism industry has been one of the worst hit during this crisis due to travel restrictions and many countries shutting off their borders. This has brought some much deserved relief to the elephants in countries like Thailand and India, which are popular for elephant joy rides for tourists. So now we can understand how this pandemic had a rejuvenating effect on our ecosystem and wildlife around us. The same can be seen in the upcoming video.
Since humans began retreating from public spaces in fear of the coronavirus, nature has begun reclaiming its space.
चंडीगढ़ में भी कर्फ्यू की वजह से पूरे शहर में सन्नाटा पस रहा है, तो वहीं अब पहाड़ों और जंगलों से जानवर शहर की तरफ आने लगे हैं। चंडीगढ़ में कल बारहसिंगा का झुंड आ गया और आज तेंदुए घूम रहे हैं।
A rare video of a Nilgai walking freely on an empty Noida road, and deers have been spotted in Tirupati. The sky is much bluer than ever before. So maybe pollution is down and the animals are back on the roads.
While this puma surprised residents of Chile's capital, Santiago, when it came down from nearby mountains. Although some animals are enjoying their newfound freedom, these monkeys in Thailand, accustomed to getting snacks from people, brawled in the street over a cup of yogurt.
Otters are roaming freely thanks to the empty public spaces. A bunch of Egyptian geese were spotted crossing the tarmac of the Tel Aviv airport in Israel. They could walk freely, as you can see, without fear of human intervention.
It's really a good thing within all the worrying and the situation that's happening right now. Of all the impacts of the pandemic, one of the few positive impacts is giving nature a break.
शहर में कर्फ्यू और सन्नाटे का असर अब कहीं ना कहीं जंगली इलाकों में भी दिखने लगा है और जंगली जानवर अब शहरी इलाकों की तरफ आने लगे हैं।
Let the coronavirus crisis leave us with this lesson. Learn to coexist, or nature will find extreme ways to reclaim its space.
So we saw how happy these animals were because of no human intervention. Till now, we have discussed the positive impact of COVID-19 on nature. Now, let us talk about the Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is one of the most important and one major initiative that India has witnessed during the pandemic. Now, would anybody like to tell what does Atmanirbhar Bharat means to you?
Atmanirbhar Bharat was despite self-sufficient India. The idea was by Modi to give a glimpse of the Union budget.
Shivani, you're not audible.
Hello?
Yes, Shivani.
Okay, so Atmanirbhar Bharat is like self-sufficient India, in which Modi had a view that India becomes more productive and as a reliable source of economy in the long run.
Yes, Shivani, correctly said. Anybody else who would like to tell? Okay. So let me. Please, Ronak.
Can you please repeat your question? What you said?
What does Atmanirbhar Bharat means?
Okay. Can I give an example?
Yes, sure.
As we all know that the future industry of automobile is all about the electric car, right? So for electric car, we need lithium-ion battery, and we are totally dependent on the China. But now in Atmanirbhar I just started lithium-ion battery, which means that we need to buy it from China.
Yes, it's correct. Thank you so much. So yeah, COVID has initiated Atmanirbhar Bharat. It is not about being self-contained or being close to the world. It is about being self-sustaining and self-generating. It's in relation to the economic development of the country. It strives to make India a bigger and more important part of global economy. In May 2020, Prime Minister Modi laid down 5 pillars of Atmanirbhar Bharat, that is, economy, infrastructure, technology-driven system, vibrant demography, and demand. Initiatives were growth of India's PPE sector, Made in India 5G network by Reliance Jio, and import embargo placed on 101 items in defense sector. Atmanirbhar Bharat was the Oxford Hindi Word of the Year 2020. Vocal for Local says, not only should products be made in India, but the promotion of these products should take place so as to make those products competitive. We should appreciate local products as they are made in India. This initiative was started as a result of ban on Chinese product. In times of distress, it's important to set up and do everything we can to help revive the Indian economy. By helping revive the Indian economy, we are helping create more jobs, transform business processes, and strengthen efficiency. The world has changed and we don't know when the crisis will pass. All we can do is cooperate with our government and actively practice social distancing to stay safe. Now, discussion about the silver lining of these dark clouds would be incomplete without thanking those who helped us sail through these difficult times. Therefore, we thank our real heroes. We are grateful to all our nurses and doctors who left their families to save our lives. Hats off to the sanitary people who are busy in keeping our surroundings hygienic. Kudos to the policemen making their day-night efforts in keeping everyone safe and protected in their homes. So, I believe after this session, we all are aware of not only the social and economic impact of COVID-19, but also the positive implications COVID had on humanity. I would like to end the session by saying that we are in this together and we would get through this together. Let us conclude the session on a positive note with an inspirational video.
It's interesting that the things we cherish most are the same things we walk around. They become so intertwined in the status quo that ultimately it becomes impossible to tell them apart from our day-to-day. That is, impossible until things change. Because as it turns out, that thing we call life, it has a say. There's a saying, you never really know what you have until it's gone. Sometimes it takes the most abrasive of reminders, the harshest of times, to help us recapture that perspective, to lift us up and show us what we had previously failed to see. And while our darkest moments test our strength, they push our boundaries, even transform our reality, they can also be the bridge that leads us exactly where we need to be. They remind us sometimes it's not about how we spend our time, but who we spend it with. That quiet brings clarity, and the world can spin so fast that we forget to think about our place within it. It reminds us how humanity is bigger than the sum of its parts. And it takes just as much energy to build up as it does to tear down. It reminds us that no matter where we live, what we speak, or who we pray to, we're not so different after all. It reminds us that there is so much more good in this world than evil, so much more love than hate, and so much promise for tomorrow. Someday we'll look back on this moment with the lessons we've learned, the hardships we've faced, and we will be reminded of the miracle that is the human spirit, unwavering in its resolve, unbreakable at its foundation, stronger than we could ever comprehend. See, sometimes it's hard to look around and find a reason to be optimistic, to understand or comprehend why. But what we'll find is that if we look hard enough, immersed in the uncertainty, the disruption, and in some cases, the tragedy, there's something to be gained. A tiny candle flickering in the night that will eventually grow to light our way. Because that road to tomorrow is paved with hope. There are pages unwritten, stories untold, and a new chapter to begin.
Thank you all. Now I would like to request Vardhan to take over from here.
Thank you, Prakriti. It was a very informative seminar. All of you spoke very well. I'm sure that after this seminar, all of us will have a better clarity about the social and economic implication of this pandemic, as well as some positive effect that we experience during these times. Let us now go ahead with a valedictory note. I would now like to take this opportunity to summarize today's discussion in a nutshell, and once again focus on the key point put forward by a key resource person in today's seminar. Our first resource person was Shivani Sarma, who focused on the worldwide economic implication of COVID-19. She told that COVID-19 pandemic is a global shock like no other, involving simultaneous disruption to both supply and demand in an interconnected world economy. On the supply side, infections reduce labor supply and productivity, while lockdown, business closure, and social distancing also cause supply disruption. On the demand side, layoff and the loss of income from morbidity, quarantines, and unemployment, and worsen economic prospects, reduce household consumption and firms' investment. COVID-19 is not only a global pandemic and public health crisis, it has also severely affected the global economy and financial market. Significant reduction in income, a rise in unemployment, and disruption in the transportation, service, and manufacturing industries are among the consequences of the disease mitigations measures that have been implemented in many countries. Apart from Indian scenario, she also talked about the worldwide economic impact of COVID-19. She said that with globalization, urbanization, and environmental change, infectious disease outbreak and epidemics have become global threat requiring a collective response. She also mentioned that every crisis brings about a unique opportunity to rethink on the path undertaken for the development of human being, community, and the society. The COVID-19 pandemic has a clear message for the Indian economy to adopt sustainable development model, which are based on self-reliance, inclusive framework, and are environmental friendly. Subsequently, Shivani Soni, as the second resource person, explained about the social implication of COVID-19. She said that COVID-19, which is said to have emerged from Wuhan, China, has caused a serious impact on almost every section of the earth. Due to the problem caused by particular health crisis all over the world, the World Health Organization, WHO, has declared it as a global pandemic. Not only that, we were forced to stop international traveling, but also the lockdown has been recognized as the only method to control the spread of the pandemic, and almost every country has adopted this method. The social distance and the security measures have affected the relationship among people and their perception of empathy towards others. She further discusses the social impact of the pandemic being seen around the world. First, impact of COVID-19 on people's livelihood, their health and food system. We must rethink the future of our environment and tackle climate change and environmental degradation with ambition and urgency. Only then we can protect the health, livelihood, food security and nutrition of all people and ensure that our new normal is a better one. The next point which we'll be discussing is the educational impact. The pandemic has affected educational system worldwide, leading to the widespread closure of schools, colleges, and universities. The next point she discusses about the coronavirus and inequality. Low-income individuals are more likely to contract the coronavirus and to die from it. In countries around the world, the low-income neighborhoods are disproportionately hit by coronavirus cases. The next point which she discusses is the psychological impact. The coronavirus pandemic has been followed by a spike in case of suicide all around the world. Impacted by depressing thoughts, social isolation due to quarantine and social distancing guidelines, fear and unemployment, and financial factors. The next point which she discussed is the personal gathering has been seen as strong as medical experts have advised, and local authorities often mandated stay-at-home guidelines in order to prevent gathering of any size, not just the larger event that were initially restricted. She said that this pandemic had a huge social impact around the world. This pandemic is preparing us to adopt to a diverse way of living with positive and major negatives that directly or indirectly affect our mental states. These include a risk of depression and anxiety, sense of detachment, loneliness, fear of losing our loved ones, and stressing about our futures. As the third resource person of the seminar, Prakriti Ahuja explained about the positive implication of COVID-19. She covered the following points. First, helped build genuine relationship. We all have been so busy living the life. Many of us have lost those real, genuine moments we have with our loved ones. It could have been due to the busy schedules, running around to meet and meets, and rushing to be in urgent meetings. As life slowed down, we have found ways to stay connected with people, even if it is virtually. The next point which she discusses entire lifestyle changes to practice better hygiene. Being hygiene is no longer just a good habit, but the very skill you need for survival. Time has changed and people are now aware of how important it is to keep yourself clean. We went from shaking hand to namaste so as to follow the no contact policy to help prevent COVID-19. The next point which she discusses is the air become cleaner and the environment more cleaner. Greenhouse gas emission and pollution level across the country had fallen significantly. Delhi had one of the lowest air pollution levels seen in the past decade or longer. The same was true for other metropolitan cities like Mumbai and Kolkata. She also talked about how nature is healing by people restrict their movement outdoor and vehicle retreat to garages and depot. Therefore, we can say that this pandemic has shocked the world and affected mankind adversely. With this, I conclude the valedictory note and would now request Riya to present vote of thanks and to bring the seminar to its conclusion. Please, Riya.
A very good afternoon to everyone. I am Riya Verma from MBA first year, a student coordinator of the Social Club. I am here to spell out word of thanks to all those who made this day useful and informative. In this seminar, we have learned about so many situations that people around the world faced during this catastrophic pandemic. The resource persons made us realize the economic and social implications of the pandemic, while at the same time pointing out the silver lining of the dark clouds. I thank all three resource persons, Shivani Sharma, Shivani Soni, and Prakriti Ahuja, for their valuable inputs. Vardhan for comparing events so well, and Yuvraj for extending his supports in coordinating the event. I thank our Honorable Director, Dr. Aparna Mishra Ma'am, for her guidance and support for this event. I would also like to give my thankful regards to our social club faculty coordinators for their valuable contribution, guidance, and encouragement in all our efforts. Last but not least, I thank you, dear audience, for your cooperation in making this event a success. Finally, I leave you with this inspiring quote by Roy T. Bennett. Nobody is exempt from the trials of life, but everyone can always find something positive, even in the worst of times. Once again, I thank you all for your attention.
Okay, thank you, students. Thank you for joining the webinar. And I believe you all must have learned something from the in-depth views that the resource person shared. Very well done, resource person. Very well done, right? So thank you all. You all can leave.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for this event.
Thank you so much.